Hey everyone, if you've made it this far in the video lecture series, I think you've been, enjoying the content so far. At least that's my hope. Now we have the media section of them all in the Breaking into Software Sales mini lecture series, the Q&A. This will be a long one, and we'll cover all the different types of questions that they're going to ask you, that you should ask them, how to structure Q&A, and how to think about responding. It's really good stuff. I hope you enjoy. As always, please like and subscribe. Check out my website for more content and professional software sales courses. Will out.
Practice and preparation, the ethos of this lecture series. So congratulations, you've got the job. Now you want to do everything you can to make sure that you get in there and ace the interview. So time to prepare. We're going to start off by going over a to-do list. So essentially key items that are going to be covered throughout the rest of this lecture that we have to make sure are top of mind and that we get right before we go into that interview. The first is learning to pitch yourself. So we talked about the elevator pitch here, being able to essentially master a narrative, a 30-second narrative of everything personal and professional and extracurricular about who you are, and explain, where you started and how you ended up right in front of them and why they should care. Learn to pitch the company. We'll talk about this later in this lecture, but essentially learning to pitch the company and learning to pitch the product and service are extremely important. You're going to want to do due diligence, researching their website, and relay to them that you understand what they're about and show them truly that you want to be part of their game. Another element of this is building a 90-day plan. So essentially, before you go into that interview, thinking strategically, how would you approach this job? What are the types of customers that you would reach out to? And how would you do all this? A lot of this is going to be covered in the Account Executive Bootcamp, but building a 90-day plan before you go into that interview is going to be extremely helpful. And with all of this, of course, you want to show them that you can hit the ground running, that you visualized yourself in the position, and show them what hiring you looks and feels like, because they're going to be building an impression of you throughout this interview, and they're going to come out essentially knowing, if we hired this individual, are they going to be successful, or are we going to regret it later? So all your preparation and everything in the lecture to come is going to shape you so that you can go in and be calm, cool, collected, and convince them that you're the person for the job. Let's dive in. Now we're going to talk about the Q&A, probably the most intimidating aspect of the interview, because that's where you're on the ball, right? We're going to start by looking at the interviewer perspective, and I want to say a few things which should give you confidence. The first is, nobody likes interviewing. I've interviewed people, I've been in multiple interviews, and no one likes doing it. It's kind of this artificial interaction between people, especially in modern day culture where, boundaries are being dropped and people are much more sociable and connected. No one likes the formality, so just accept that. You're in it together and put a smile on. Second, they are looking for reasons to hire you. This kind of builds off my last point. They don't like interviewing. They would love to be blown away by the first person they meet, but unfortunately they generally have to go through a few dozen at least. They're not out to get you. Don't think they're trying to stump you. They're trying to help you succeed in the process. Again, given the past 2 points, this logic is building on itself, and they are normal people. They're not different from anyone else. They're just people who went through the same process, got the job like you are. So rest assured. Now I want to continue on the interviewer perspective, and I want to go through different categories of evaluation. So these are questions that your interviewer is going to ask themselves when they're meeting you. There's 3 general types of questions that they're going to be asking you. The first type is professional fit, and these are the types of questions. Can I see myself working with this person in a professional environment? Would they fit in with the company culture? That's the first thing that they're going to think to themselves. Would you even fit in professionally with the company? The second is job qualifications. Maybe they say, hey, you've answered the first part. Now, can I see them succeeding in this position? Do they have the hard and soft skills to get the job done? Could I rely on them to pull through when shit hits the fan? Excuse my French. And the third type is personal fit. They're going to ask themselves, okay, I see the professional fit. This individual is qualified, but can I see myself building a friendship with this person? Do I personally have much in common with them? And generally speaking, there's a few candidates that come down to the very end with the right professional fit and job qualifications, and the personal fit's what makes the difference, because you want to vouch for people that you feel connected with. And in order to answer those questions, there's a few different types of questions that they will ask. They're going to ask situational questions, and that's going to help them answer professional fit. Situational are essentially used to assess how you approach hypothetical scenarios and replicate life on the job. An example might be if you were faced with a situation where you had to either deliver something on time or at the desired quality, how would you respond? There's competency-based questions where they assess your professional skills. What companies would make an ideal fit for our product, and how would you structure your prospecting? That's a fairly advanced question, but you might get something like that. And it's to test whether you have the attributes, knowledge, and skill sets required to succeed in the position. And the third type are behavioral. So this is all about personal fit. To gain a sense of your character, your ability to manage your emotions and meet challenges. An example might be if a colleague took a meeting with a qualified lead that you had been developing, how would you respond? That's something that occurs daily, or at least monthly. And of course, they're all interrelated. You might get questions that hit on each one of them. The purpose of this course is to give you some structure and perspective, but real life is a little messier, as we can all imagine. So now let's go to talking about some attributes. This is a fairly generic list, but I think it's worth mentioning. Some positive attributes that they're going to be looking for and that you can come across with are leadership, teamwork, maturity, integrity, intelligence, professionalism, energy, and confidence. Super important. Now, some negative attributes: lack of confidence, lack of enthusiasm, lack of preparedness, lack of integrity, unprofessional attitude, poor communication, poor team player, general immaturity. We all want blue. Let's try to stay away from the red. There's nothing I can prescribe here except do your preparation, have a great attitude, and go in there being yourself. But just so you know, that's kind of what a sales interview is looking for, and most interviews in general, to be honest. The best way I've found to prepare myself and to, kind of give counsel to others is, instead of trying to prepare examples for every single attribute or every single question they could ask, it's good to craft stories or narratives that basically highlight examples in your life where you covered a vast array of those qualities. And it's great to center those stories around a few key things. So if you have a story on leadership, if you have a story on entrepreneurial drive where you solved a tough problem, a story on teamwork, and a story on problem solving, you're pretty good. Let's dive into those a little bit more. So leadership would be like, share an example where you showed initiative and effectively worked with people to achieve a common goal. If you have a story that hits on that, it will also showcase other positive attributes they're looking for, and you'll answer a lot of those questions in one. If you have an entrepreneurial drive story where you talk about a time where you went outside of your comfort zone to achieve something you wanted, that's going to hit on a lot of things as well, and you can use that to answer a number of different questions. Teamwork: explain a challenging situation you encountered when working with someone with an opposing opinion. So how do you work well with others in difficult situations? And lastly, problem solving: discuss a situation where you were faced with a challenging problem and had to creatively solve it. So if you have stories from each one of these, you're going to be really well prepared. One of the final, kind of basic recommendations I want is just have a great answer to these questions right here. If you are able to prepare stories as shown in the previous slide, understand the types of questions that interviewers are asking, what they're looking for, and have answers to these run-of-the-mill questions, you're honestly good to go. You can stop this lecture. The more you pay attention, the better you'll be, but this should be sufficient. The first is, could you walk me through your resume and background? This will come up in every single interview. It's the most basic thing. Can you create a consistent narrative, show drive and motivation in your resume and your background? Why technology sales? That question will always come up. And this is where understanding the different levels of analysis on sector, on stage, on company, on product will all be extremely relevant here. What are your biggest strengths and weaknesses? This will be different for every person, but very relevant. Could you give us an overview of our company and products? We already hit on this, but this always comes up. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? extremely important because they want to see that you have some vision for yourself in the future. And you know what? It doesn't have to include the company. You don't need to say, "Hey, I want to be the vice president, the youngest vice president in the firm." But just to see that you have some ambition is something they're going to look forward to. And then, what do you like to do for fun? Again, they're people. No one likes interviewing, so they want to see if there's any personal fit alignment here. If you can answer these run-of-the-mill questions, you're in very good footing. Now that we've covered a general framework for the types of questions that an interviewer will ask you, as well as provided you with a list of some of the most basic ones, it's important to cover a structure on how to craft a response. And we're going to go through something that's called the STAR method. So STAR. The S stands for situation. So you'll want to describe a specific personal, professional, or extracurricular situation that you faced. The T stands for task. Outline the specific goal that you were working towards in that situation. A stands for action. Describe the specific actions that you took to address the situation in an appropriate amount of detail. Use the word I, not we, to show ownership. And lastly, R, result. Describe the outcome of your actions and how they led to a positive result. Be sure to be humble yet confident in taking credit for your successes. Interviewers want to see that you have initiative, you can drive positive change, and can deliver high quality results on time and under pressure. So situation, task, action, result, the STAR method. It probably seems similar to the strategy that we use to craft bullet points on the resume. Having a clear structure always helps because this way it can be repeatable for all of the different questions that they ask. And again, authenticity matters, so just be yourself, but follow that structure and make it your own. Let's go through some examples now. So owning the Q&A. A question could be, could you describe a challenging situation you faced during your sales internship and how you solved it? Okay, situation. With 2 weeks left before the conclusion of my 8-week internship, my sales cohort had only achieved 60% of quota it was assigned, and 2 out of our 5 team members were on leave with COVID. Okay, task. As team lead, I had to devise a strategy to achieve quota within a short period of time. Action. I coordinated an emergency team meeting with the 3 remaining interns to review project goals, communications plan, and sales tactics. I then instructed the interns on leave to shift responsibilities to data entry and increase the volume of calls, emails, and door-to-door outreach into overtime hours. Result? As a result of my strategy shift, we attained 125% of quota and received the award for highest sales relative to the 3 other intern sales cohorts. So the question was, describe a challenging situation. You described the situation, the task you had to undertake, the action you took, and the result. Very clean and clear. Now that you have some perspective on some of the run-of-the-mill questions that you might get asked, and you have a method for answering them using the STAR method, situation, task, action, result, let's look at some more detailed interview questions. So for starters, why do you want a career in sales? That's a pretty general one. Why did you apply to this position? How did you prepare for this interview? Could you pitch me our company's product? Who would be our ideal customers be? Could you teach me something that you are knowledgeable about? Is there anything you don't like about the idea of sales? What is your definition of an ideal workplace environment? How about tell me a scenario where you made a mistake? How did you approach the situation? Give an example of a time when you received constructive feedback. How did you respond? What question did you wish I had asked you and why? What questions do you have for me? So you can see how these are kind of a mix of what we covered earlier. There's some questions relating to company, to position, to product. There's some questions that kind of hit on the personal fit, the professional fit, the situational type questions. And there's a Q&A part where they ask, what questions do you have for me? This is something we'll dive to shortly, but you want to basically have a very holistic view when you're approaching this situation. I stand by my earlier comments as well. If you have the run-of-the-mill questions and stories prepared, as well as a general understanding of your resume, you'll be good enough. But this is just to add some more color, and if you kind of go through these, it'll only give you more confidence. Let's go on now and look at some experienced interview questions. So some more experienced questions that might come up could include the following. Again, this list is not exhaustive, but I wanted to give you as much to think about as I could. So could you please walk me through a sales funnel? Now, if this is an introductory thing for you, it might not be as relevant. I would encourage you to take my Account Executive Bootcamp course, where afterwards you're going to be able to explain the sales funnel in your sleep. How do you approach prospecting? Again, you could learn that in the course, or if you have some experience, answer it that way. How do you qualify an account? Could you walk me through your current sales process? How would you develop our sales territory? Again, somewhat experienced questions. Or pitch me the last product you sold. Have you ever missed your quota? How did you adapt? What's your proudest sales accomplishment? What's your favorite part of a sales job? What is your least favorite part of a sales job? How do you stay knowledgeable about your target audience? Tell me about a time when you collaborated with people outside your sales team. Have you ever used a CRM before? If so, which and how? Why do you want to leave your current position? This is assuming that you had a sales job and you're interviewing for another one. Now we'll move on to general questions that you can ask the interviewer. I believe that just as it's important to have well thought out answers to their questions, they want to see that you're coming in with an inquisitive mindset, that you've thought about the position in the company and that you have questions for them. So what does that look like? Well, one bucket might be questions related to the job itself. So what are the expectations for this role? What does the onboarding process look like? What key metrics will my performance be evaluated against? What are the biggest challenges I might face in the position? What is most required to succeed in this position? Or about team. Could you tell me about the team I'd be working with? What other departments would I be interfacing with? How big is the team? How has the team been performing? Does the team do lunches or events together? Or the company. What are the company's plans for growth? How would you describe the company's value? What makes the quote-unquote company stand out relative to competitors? What kind of company events are there? Or the manager. You might ask this directly to the interviewer. How long have you been with the company? How has your career path developed so far? How do you see your role developing? What is your favorite part of working here? About professional development. Is there any recommended preparation I should do before starting? What are the common career paths in this department? Is there a defined criteria for performance-based promotion? And lastly, about closing. Is there anything I haven't asked that would have been helpful? Is there anything else you would like to ask me? What are next steps in the hiring process? One thing I want you to always ask is, what are the next steps in the hiring process? Never ask about remuneration, but you want to show that you're looking forward to a structured process and that you demand something from them from giving you their time. Now let's move on to experience questions to ask. This is more relevant to somebody who's already worked in sales, but I think it's beneficial to have some perspective. I don't recommend that you try to memorize these, but again, just for perspective's sake, you can have a read through. Back to company. What are key differentiators for this company? What does the competitive landscape look like? What are the short and medium-term strategy for this company? In which geographies do the sales teams currently operate? What is the current growth trajectory? Or the team? What is the current state of the go-to-market team? What kind of technology resources does your team use? What types of sales support would there be? Is there a channel or customer success team? What level of coordination exists between departments? Performance-oriented? What are the current performance metrics? What are quota expectations? What are the incentive structures? What's the ramp-up period? A lot of these questions will be answered in the Account Executive Bootcamp, which I encourage you to take. Or resources. What types of sales support will there be? What is the current marketing footprint or strategy? What is the state of your channel alliance structure? What kinds of collateral and marketing materials exist on product market fit? Or market product. What does the current ICP, ideal customer profile, something taught in the next course, look like? What territories are well developed? How long is the average sales cycle? What does the conversion analysis look like? Is the product deemed essential or nice to have? And benefits, lastly. I know this is quite a bit, guys. What benefits are included with this position? What does the expense policy look like for travel? What is the compensation structure, base commission equity? What is your policy regarding remote work? What is the vacation allowance? So that was a bit of a mouthful, but I hope if you pause and look at this after this lecture, you'll get some more sense. And if you internalize some of these things, you'll start to think like a sales professional, and that will all just come off as beneficial in the interview.